Start the recording. Thanks everybody for joining. It's 2:30. Really appreciate everybody coming online for our webinar on who you are as a leader. Get the screen sharing back up. We want to try and make sure that this is done in a half hour, respectful of everyone's time. Let's get screen sharing up and get going. So exciting content today. I've made some good notes so that we don't overlook anything. Today's webinar is about leadership psychology, defining your leadership identity. And we are talking about who are you as a leader, right? So before we, dive into the psychology of leadership, let's start with something foundational. That's what we've been talking about. Identity. Identity isn't just about how we define ourselves, but it's also about how others perceive us. Okay? It's shaped by our values, our experiences, and the social world around us. Um, Also, I think one of the things to talk about is, emotional intelligence when we get done here. We've got another webinar coming up on that topic. And then most specific to today's conversation is growth mindset. We're going to talk about that a little bit as how that compares to a fixed mindset. Um, the second, more or less, bullet point here I'd like to point out before we move on to other slides is when we talk about identity, it shapes how we see ourselves and how others perceive us. In the world of sociology, social psychology, that's what's called milieu, or in some cases, milieu control. Um, when we don't step outside of what that milieu is, but essentially that goes back to when our parents, many of us had the conversation. Well, if your friends, throw their bike over the bridge, you're going to throw your bike over bridge as well. So that milieu has a lot to do with who we are, what influenced us as we grow up, and how that affects us today. Let's talk about understanding identity and leadership a little bit. Sociologists like George Herbert Mead talked about the idea of the social self, which is the way we form our identity through interactions with others. Just talked about that a little bit with milieu. Okay, our experiences are going to be quite different if we grow up going to in a rural community in the middle of Northern California or Wyoming. Is going to be quite different than if we grow up going to a private school, for example, in Manhattan. One real quick note, this is going to be posted out on YouTube. So while I would encourage, note taking, things like that, if we're going a little bit too fast in the interest of time, all of this content will be, posted as a video out on YouTube for review later. Back to this, psychologist Erik Erikson emphasized stages of identity development, how we evolve through life experiences. When it comes to leadership, okay, these theories matter. Why? Because we just don't operate in isolation. Your leadership identity is built through, your own personal experiences, professional challenges, and the way you've responded to feedback over time. And again, making another reference back to that milieu. Um, Mead, sociologist, goes back to the 50s. Social scientists have come a long way since the 1950s to appreciate the importance of how people understand themselves. And there's been a lot of research, extensive research, that's been conducted on the way your self-concept can affect your professional and personal lives. We're going to talk about some of this research today. So why does identity matter in leadership? Simply put, it's your foundation. You build your house upon a rock or a house upon sand. It dictates your decision-making style, how you interact with teams, and how others trust and follow you. Leaders with a clear sense of identity, and here's one to write down in bold if you're taking notes. Leaders with a clear sense of identity show more confidence, they're more consistent, and they're more resilient. These are all qualities that have been shown to inspire those around them. As we move forward in this session, I'd encourage you to, take a moment to reflect. What are the key experiences and values that define your leadership identity today? It's important to write that down. You could even, if it's enabled, I'm a bit of a newbie to Zoom, but if it's available, you can also post that in the chat or, drop it in the Q&A. But let's keep moving. Let's talk about the key to understanding your identity and the key to leadership and network. So before you can build a strong professional network, it's essential to truly understand yourself. Spend some time in self-reflection. Your identity isn't just something that you're born with, it's something you actively shape over time. We have control over this. So the more intentional you are about defining your professional identity, the more you'll be able to inspire trust, enhance your leadership skills, and even improve your overall well-being. Okay? Many of us assume that our identity is fixed, but in reality, we have more control over it than we realize. By recognizing our values, strengths, and aspirations, we can craft an identity that aligns with both our personal and professional goals. Years ago, I worked with a social psychologist, worked with executive leadership. And that's one of the things that I did, wrote down, who am I at the core, right? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my values, right? And so having that in writing helped me to really identify where I was at and which path I wanted to take, and not just take, but create for myself, as this particular slide is alluding to. All right, as we move forward, we'll explore how self-awareness serves as the foundation for effective leadership and networking. And let's start by reflecting on what truly defines who you are as a leader. So, defining your own identity. Our identity isn't just what we believe about ourselves, it's also influenced by how others perceive us. We tend to adopt traits that are reinforced by our social circles. If everyone around you sees you as strategic or innovative, that identity strengthens. If those around you reject or challenge that identity, it can make it harder to sustain. Now you're kind of swimming against the currents. So this is why self-authorship is really critical. Don't take ownership of your identity. There's another old words to write down. If you don't take ownership of your identity, others will shape it for you. Okay. Imagine yourself, defining yourself as a creative thinker, but your colleagues dismiss that notion. You'd either need to reshape your self-concept or seek a new environment that supports it. I can think of it not necessarily directly in leadership, but analogous enough that I think it bears some thought here that, if that group of people is, not in alignment with where you are and where you're going, and it might be frustrating, to deal with that group of people, maybe some anger, anxiety, or whatever, to take a moment and reflect on that. And a saying that I developed was, it wasn't that I wasn't listening to, John and or Jane Doe. It was that I wasn't listening to John and Jane not listening to me. Okay. And again, this will be out on the YouTube channel, something that you can take a second look at and really let that sink in. But sometimes I think, again, listening that other people aren't listening to us, and instead of becoming frustrated by that, deciding that I have agency in this scenario and I have the right to choose who I want in my social circle. Sometimes comes with costs, of course. But a couple slides ago, there's different paths to take, and we can create them for ourselves. So the key takeaway here: be proactive in defining who you are, because it's far better to lead that process than to let others eat it for you. All right, let's see how we're doing on time. We're 10 minutes in. I want to keep this to a half hour, so it looks like we got 20 more minutes. Um, Career transitions aren't just about learning new skills, okay? They're about reshaping how we see ourselves. In the book Working Identity, um, up in Amazon. Not sure if anybody here has read that one, but the author emphasizes that to truly step into a new role, you must experiment with different identity elements. Okay, this might mean taking on side projects, exploring, new professional interests, or even adjusting how we talk about ourselves and to ourselves. And I would suggest here, real quick, without going too far off on a tangent, if you're not a follower of Adam Grant, especially if you do some driving. I think his podcasts are anywhere from an hour, 3, 5 minutes long. Um, Pretty much always guaranteed to be a good listen. But recently, there was one of his guests was talking about the power of the voice and how you talk to yourself, and that we all have self-doubting voices at times, and that it's scientific research is shown that assigning a name to this sounds a little bit like you're talking to yourself, but actually you are talking to yourself. But assigning a name, maybe it's someone from your childhood or whatever, have from time to time said, Keith, I just don't have time for that right now. And it's actually beneficial, right? It's as if you're telling someone to go away. I have better things to do, and it's been shown to be a powerful tool. Um, Back to this, however, one of the most powerful techniques that the author of Working Identity suggests is storytelling. Okay, crafting and refining your personal narrative. So if you're stepping into a leadership role, start telling yourself and others that you're a leader. Notice how people respond. Okay? It's important to have that emotional intelligence. Um, See how other people are responding to you, to evaluate that, and then you may need to tweak your message accordingly until it both feels right to you and gains acceptance and traction to those around you. Key takeaway here: our professional identities are not fixed. They evolve through our experiences and the way we interact with others, and we have the power to shape and refine them intentionally. All right, let's talk about this. Your identity serves you best when you take ownership of it rather than letting others define it. Into that a little bit already. Research confirms this. In a study, participants were asked to complete sentences either affirming how they see themselves or how others see them. Then they were given challenging math problems to solve. Okay, so the example would be they would have to complete a sentence that would be like this: when I am a blank, I feel blank. Okay, so an example would be when I am a student, it's my identity. When I'm a student, I feel fulfilled. Okay, internally, I feel fulfilled. The latter group was asked to complete a similar sentence: when I am a blank, I am a student, I receive praise. Okay, so it was something positive. I receive praise, but it's external, something that somebody else is giving to me. Okay, so they were given one of those two conditions, um, an entire sample group. The results were pretty striking. Those who affirmed their self-determined identity performed better than the control group. Okay, while those who focused on externally defined identity, right? When I'm a student, I feel praise. They performed worse. So just that internal processing had a huge effect on the outcome of this experiment. So it underscores the importance of defining yourself on your own terms. Very powerful stuff. So I'm going to go back and take notes on that one. Those would be some big items to put in bold writing and underline, highlight, etc. All right, when you interact with others, be intentional and assertive in presenting who you are as a leader. Align your identity with the roles you want to step into. By owning your identity, you enhance leadership, enhance performance, and enhance the ability to inspire trust. Big things when we're talking about leading. Let's talk quickly about creating your identity map. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but nonetheless, I think that it's important. So to map this out, you visualize your identity. You place the words me in the center of the page. Um, you organize identity elements in concentric circles. Ones that are most important go into the center. Draw links between related elements. Education and career possibly go hand in hand. Same thing with hobbies and traits. Here's a big one. Acknowledge some concealed elements. Highlight any aspects you tend to hide in professional or social settings. Quick one. I can think of some people that I know in a professional setting that have tattoos, for example. I'm not talking face or neck, right? Hard to hide and conceal, but maybe on the arm or whatever. And it's one of people's choice whether they want to, wear short sleeve shirts in the office and expose that, or wear long sleeve shirts when it's 100 and some degrees, or maybe the humidity in the summer and is unbearable, but nonetheless they're going to conceal that. So we'll talk about why here in just a moment. But also, the broader your identity that you have, it leads to larger professional networks or connections that you can make with people. We'll also talk about that in just a minute. Here's what a map would look like. Okay, with part of this has been highlighted and blown out what those identity elements may look like. Real quick, I mean, if you have the opportunity to subscribe to Harvard Business Review, there's always great insights on leadership and other aspects of business out there. So spend some time and put this together. It's my suggestion to you. Let's talk about concealment real briefly and what its impact is on connections and trust. When we hide parts of our identity, we limit the connections we can make with others. Okay. And, commonalities are essential for building relationships. Conceal key aspects of who we are, we reduce opportunities for genuine connection. Trust is built through authenticity. We're constantly holding back, it creates a barrier between us and others. It's also taxing, right? Concealing things can be taxing. So yeah, it's not just social, it can be mentally exhausting as well. You have to be on guard, drains cognitive resources, as I said already. That mental strain can negatively impact focus, creativity, and overall work so if you're going to conceal parts of your identity, consider why. You're doing that. And then that's an important first step because you can ask yourself, does the cost of hiding outweigh the potential risk of revealing who that it is you are? And everybody's case is going to be different. Concealment may be necessary, but in others, the fear of judgment may not align with the actual consequences. More identity elements means more diverse networks. Okay, research has found that executives with more identity elements in their maps had more diverse professional networks, which leads to diversity in networks, leads to broader perspectives, better decision-making, and increased creativity. Expanding and embracing your identity elements can help you connect with a wider range of people and ideas, right? Finding something that's in common with another person, because people tend to naturally gravitate toward others that are similar to those with a more multifaceted identity can bridge different social and professional circles. This is due to individuation, which we're going to talk about in just one moment. But individuation is the ability to see oneself or another individual as unique rather than simply part of a group. So when we embrace all aspects of our identity, we naturally integrate into more diverse networks, which ultimately benefits both personal and professional growth. So individuation is the process of seeing someone as a unique individual rather than part of a broad social category. Um, when we meet someone, our brains, we have a lot to do, right? Our brains instinctively try to categorize them based on limited information. Um, we have to make, evolution has brought us to a point where, we have to make quick decisions about things. And so when someone shares multiple aspects of their identity, it becomes much harder to categorize them into one particular place, also known as kind of stereotyping, right? So, for example, if you have a colleague and you know them as just perhaps liberal and vegan, you might assume that you understand their type, who they are. Okay. However, if you learn that they're also Catholic, maybe they run marathons, they're from a working class background, they were a student at Columbia Business School, that starts to disrupt any single label that you put on them. So instead of fitting them into a pre-existing box, you're forced to see them as a unique person. And the same thing works in the other direction. So this fosters more meaningful connections and expands professional and personal networks. Because when we see others as individuals rather than stereotypes, it creates space for understanding and trust and collaboration. It also leads to richer, more diverse networks, which studies have shown improve creativity and decision. Key takeaway here, the more multifaceted our identities and the more we recognize that in others, the more valuable and the stronger our connections. All right. Hey, got about 8 minutes left. I think we're going to finish on time. Thanks for hanging in there. Hopefully we have some time for Q&A. Almost there. So my experience working with leaders and executives, I found that a whole identity approach is key to personal and professional success. This approach involves understanding all the elements that make up your identity and how they interact with one another. So by doing so, you can apply best practices that enhance performance, relationships, and overall well-being. There's 5 essential practices for effective identity management in the workplace, and then I'd like to go through them really quick here. First, cultivate a multifaceted identity. The more elements you recognize in yourself, whether it's your cultural background, skills, values, passions, the more diverse your perspectives and connections. Second, define your identity with intention, self-directed in shaping who you are rather than letting external labels take control, take agency. Third, find harmony among your identity elements. Not all aspects of your identity may contribute positively to your growth, okay? But identify what strengthens your sense of purpose and let go of elements that do not align with your values or aspirations. Very key, done it myself. It's awesome. I highly recommend it. Fourth, connect your identity to your professional roles. Understanding how your unique qualities influence your leadership style, your decision making, and your interactions. That helps you succeed in the roles. Finally, be open to presenting your identity. Transparency and authenticity foster trust and stronger relationships, creating a positive impact on both personal and organizational levels. Okay. I've coached some younger leaders on speaking, quarterly meetings, essentially public speaking. And I've admitted, sometimes I'm quirky. I repeat things. Maybe I, stutter a little bit. I might not make the appropriate amount of eye contact. I work on those things. I try to recognize those things so that I can become better at those things. But I am completely okay with being a little bit, quirky or awkward because it's just who I am. Growing up, other kids were, you have to be careful with this, right? Because I don't want to be that negative, Keith voice talking to myself, but it seemed like others were just more naturally talented, and maybe they were, but also that growth mindset plays dividends because I think sticking with it, um, you know, growing through adversity, getting better at what you do, is all healthy behaviors to have. All right, so by embracing those 5 practices, I think you're not just managing your identity, you're shaping it greater success and fulfillment in your career and beyond. Final thoughts. Final thoughts here, folks. Just a few minutes left. As we wrap up this discussion on identity management, I'd like to leave you with a few key takeaways. First, maybe repeating some of these again, your identity is one of the most powerful tools you have. Understanding it, actively shaping it, that can enhance not only your own performance, but also your relationships, not just at work, at home, at leisure. Excuse me. All of the above. Second, authenticity is key. Just talked about that a moment ago. When you're open about who you are, you foster trust and connection. Those that are around you. This is what builds strong teams and thriving workplaces. Third, diversity isn't just about teams, it's about individuals. When you cultivate a multifaceted identity, you bring different perspectives to the table, which leads to better decision-making, innovation. All right, so what's next? What's next? Take some time to reflect on your own identity. Highly recommend that. Are there aspects that you've been concealing? Are there areas where you can be more intentional, right? Intentional in creating that path for yourself, intentional in how you communicate who you are and where you're going and how you want to lead others. Think about how you can apply these 5 practices to your work and to your leadership. Ultimately, when we embrace our whole identity, we don't just become better professionals, we become better leaders, better colleagues, and better human beings. Awesome. Thanks for your time, everybody. Really appreciate. We had quite a few people here. I thought we had almost a dozen at one time. And thank you for your time. I encourage you to go forward with confidence in building your own unique identity. Before we do leave, I'm going to stop screen sharing and just go back and make sure we don't have any questions. But I'd like to invite you to join our upcoming leadership workshop on June 26th. We'll take a deep dive into emotional intelligence. The web address to go to register and read about that is shown there below, straightforward.today/roundtable. And plus, you'll get to engage with other professionals who are on the same journey, possibly creating a network of support and inspiration. I look forward to seeing you there. I'm going to stop screen sharing. Do not have any open questions, which is good because it's 2:59 and I committed to keeping to that 30-minute time frame. So please join us on the 26th. That's open in your calendar. There's also other webinars listed on the straightforward.today roundtable site that go into the summer, and we'll have some coming up in the fall. Thanks again. Really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed the content. Please leave a message on LinkedIn if you can. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.